When I picked up the phone that morning, I wasn't expecting my world to shatter with one sentence. I had simply asked my son, Ethan, when the wedding date was confirmed. His fiancée, Lara, smiled cold, polished, and far too satisfied and said, "Oh, we already got married yesterday." We only invited special people. For a moment, the air left my body. Special people. I stood there, frozen in my own living room, clutching the phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My son avoided my eyes, pretending to check messages, while Lara made herself comfortable on the sofa that I had bought for them. I had spent 3 years helping them build their lives. I paid their rent $500 a month, bought nearly every stick of furniture in their apartment, and filled their fridge when they couldn't. I was there when they were broke, when they cried, when they dreamed. But somehow, I wasn't special enough to be invited to their wedding. In my closet, the soft blue dress I'd bought for the occasion hung uselessly. I had chosen it carefully, wanting to look elegant in Ethan's wedding photos. Photos I'd never be part of. The new shoes, the jewelry, the envelope with a $1,000 wedding gift, all of it sat ready, waiting for a moment that had already happened without me. I thought of the phone calls with my sister, Helen, in Chicago, how I'd told her how proud I was, how happy Ethan and Lara were. I had scrubbed my house top to bottom, imagining they might stop by after the ceremony to celebrate. The vision shattered completely with those four words. Lara's tone was casual, like she hadn't just driven a knife through my heart. It was intimate, she added, sipping her coffee. Just a few people, a few people. I didn't have to ask who they'd posted it all on social media. I saw Lara's parents standing proudly beside the bride and groom. I saw her sisters toasting with champagne, smiling like royalty. The wedding dress partly paid for with the $800 I'd sent Lara for her personal expenses. Every image was a reminder that I had funded a day I wasn't even allowed to witness. A week passed in bitter silence. I tried to stay strong, to convince myself that maybe it wasn't personal. But the wound was deep. Then, one morning, my phone rang again. It was Lara, but her tone this time was desperate. "Mrs. Keller," she said, "the rent is overdue. The landlord says he'll evict us if we don't pay today. You forgot to make the transfer." Her voice trembled. For a moment, I didn't respond. I remembered all the times I'd run to the bank for them, cancelled my own appointments, skipped dinners, sacrificed small joys all so they could live comfortably. I breathed deeply and said calmly, "Lara, do you remember what you told me last week about special people?" There was silence on the other end. Then a nervous laugh. "Oh, that was just a misunderstanding." "No," I interrupted. "It wasn't. You made it very clear who your special people are. And I've decided I'll only help mine." The quiet that followed was thick enough to touch. I could almost hear her heartbeat through the phone. Double quotes, "Mrs. Keller," she stammered. "You don't mean that. Ethan's your son. We've always been special to you." "Not anymore," I said, and hung up. That night, I sat on my bed and cried. But they weren't tears of heartbreak anymore, they were tears of realization. I had spent years mistaking financial support for love, generosity for belonging. I had built a life around being useful to people who only saw my worth in dollars. By morning, something inside me had shifted. I looked at myself in the mirror, the wrinkles, the tired eyes, but beneath them was something new, a sharp, unfamiliar strength. I brewed my coffee, sat at the kitchen table that had seen years of tears and sacrifices, and opened my checkbook. I wanted to know exactly how much I had spent keeping them afloat. Rent, food, gifts, emergencies. The total stunned me. Over $32,000 in just 3 years, money that had come from my late husband's savings. Money meant for my peace, not their comfort. The phone rang again. It was Ethan this time. Normally, I would have rushed to answer, desperate for reconciliation. But this time, I let it ring until it stopped, and as the silence filled my house, I smiled faintly for the first time in years. Because for once, the quiet didn't feel empty, it felt like freedom. Still, deep down, I knew they wouldn't give up easily. And I was right. What happened next would make that phone call feel like a gentle warning. When Ethan and Lara realized the money had truly stopped, they didn't just get angry, they declared war. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go. The following week felt strangely calm to calm. I kept waiting for another call, another excuse, another emotional plea from Ethan or Lara, but there was nothing. For the first time in years, my phone stayed silent. I should have felt peaceful, but something about that quiet felt like the pause before a storm. That morning, I went to the Riverside Bank, the one where I'd made every transfer for them. The manager, Mr. Blake, recognized me instantly. "Good morning, Mrs. Keller," he said with his usual friendly tone. "Would you like to make the usual transfer?" I smiled politely. "Not today, Mr. Blake. In fact, I'm here to stop them, all of them." His eyebrows lifted. "All of them?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I need every standing order to be cancelled. And I also want to make sure no one else can access my accounts. No shared authorizations, no linked permissions." He hesitated, clearly surprised. "Has something happened?" I took a slow breath. "Let's just say I finally realized I've been paying rent for people who think I'm disposable." Mr. Blake nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Keller. Let's make sure you're fully protected." It took nearly an hour to go through all the forms. While he worked, my phone kept buzzing on the desk, Ethan's name flashing again and again. I ignored every call. When I finally turned it off, I felt a rush of calm I hadn't known in years. Leaving the bank, I felt lighter, as if I'd been dragging invisible chains that had just been cut. But that peace didn't last long. When I got home, 3 cars were parked outside my house. My stomach sank. I recognized too immediately Ethan's old blue sedan and Lara's silver hatchback. The third one was new, black and polished. I paused at my front gate, watching through the window. Someone was inside. They had my keys. I had given them keys years ago, trusting they'd only use them in emergencies. Inside, I found them exactly where I feared they'd be, sitting in my living room, going through my paperwork. Ethan looked up, startled. Lara was pacing, and a man I didn't know, grey suit, expensive watch, was flipping through my documents at the table. "What's going on here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. All 3 turned toward me like I was the intruder. Lara was the first to speak. "Mrs. Keller, please don't be upset. This is Mr. Franklin, our family advisor. We just want to talk about your situation." "My situation?" I repeated slowly. Ethan stood up, rubbing his neck. "Mom, you've been acting differently. Cutting us off financially without warning, not answering calls, installing new locks." "I haven't installed new locks," I interrupted. Though clearly I should have. Mr. Franklin stepped forward, voice polished and professional. "Mrs. Keller, your son and daughter-in-law are concerned. They're worried about your financial stability and decision-making. They believe you might be under stress, and we'd like to help manage your accounts temporarily." I froze. So that was the plan. They wanted my money back legally this time. Ethan looked at me with that same look he had as a teenager when he'd broken something valuable. "Mom, we just want to make sure you're safe." "You've been forgetting things lately, really?" I said coldly. "Because I remember paying your rent for 3 years. I remember buying your furniture, your groceries, your wedding dress." "My memory seems fine." Lara crossed her arms. "You're not being reasonable. Everything you have will be ours one day anyway. We're just trying to prepare." The words hit like a slap. There it was, the truth, stripped bare. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was an inheritance waiting to die. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom," Ethan started, but I raised my voice. "Out, all of you. This is my home, my life, and my money. You've had more than enough of all 3. Mr. Franklin gathered his papers, but his tone was still slick. Mrs. Keller, this isn't over. Your family has the right to intervene if they believe you're making irrational choices. Irrational? I laughed bitterly. You mean finally choosing myself? As they left, Ethan turned at the door, anger darkening his face. You'll regret this, Mom. You're going to end up alone. Maybe, I said. But at least this time, it'll be by choice. When the door closed, the silence that followed wasn't frightening. It was powerful. I stood in my living room, surrounded by the wreckage of my trust, but also by something new resolve. Still, a voice in the back of my mind whispered, "They're not done yet." And deep down, I knew it was right. Because the next time Ethan and Lara showed up, they didn't come with a lawyer, they came with a plan that would cross a line no family ever should. The next few days passed in uneasy silence. Every creak in the house felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were waiting for the next confrontation. I started sleeping with my phone turned off, something I hadn't done in years. It felt strange and freeing. One morning, as I watered the small potted plants on my porch, I saw the mailman hand me a thick envelope. The return address said Franklin and Lowe Family or Associates. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a notice of preliminary consultation request signed by Mr. Franklin, the same lawyer who had invaded my house just days earlier. I read the letter twice before I realized what it really meant. Ethan and Lara weren't just angry, they were preparing something official. By noon, I'd already called Mr. Graham, a respected local attorney I remembered from when my late husband handled our estate. He had always struck me as the kind of man who respected both law and decency. When I explained everything, he sighed. Mrs. Keller, what they're attempting is what we call financial guardianship maneuvering. They're trying to build a case that you're incapable of handling your own money. If they succeed, they could gain control over your assets. They can't just take what's mine, I whispered, not legally. But manipulation dressed as concern can be persuasive, especially when family is involved. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. You'll need to document everything, every call, every visit, every threat. And Mrs. Keller, change your locks immediately, so I did. That very afternoon, I went to LockSafe Hardware, a small shop down the street run by Mr. Sanders, a man I'd known since Ethan was little, changing the locks. He asked kindly as he gathered the tools. Yes, I said, smiling faintly. Turns out I've been letting the wrong people walk in for too long. By evening, every lock on my doors and windows had been replaced. I stood at my front door, turning the key in the new lock. It clicked with a satisfying finality, a small sound of freedom. The next day, my phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number. It was Lara. Against my better judgment, I answered. Double quotes Mrs. Keller. Please, she said in a trembling voice. Can we meet and talk? Ethan's worried sick about you. I laughed softly. Worried? That's a new emotion for him. You're being unfair, she shot back. He's your son. We love you, we're just confused. I repeated. You excluded me from your wedding. You used my money to build your life. And when I finally said no, you brought a lawyer into my home. There was silence. Then, in a smaller voice, she said, we made mistakes. But if we could just talk, maybe over dinner? Something in her tone was rehearsed, unnatural. I could almost hear the lawyer feeding her lines from across the room. Lara, I said evenly, you don't want dinner. You want access. And you'll get neither. Before she could respond, I ended the call. That evening, I opened a bottle of red wine, something I hadn't done since Robert died. I sat in my kitchen and looked around the room that had been filled with years of sacrifice. The table where I'd counted every dollar. The phone that had delivered endless pleas for help. The quiet felt heavy, but it was mine. The next morning, I met Mr. Graham again to set up safeguards. He helped me move part of my savings into a protected account, only accessible through in-person verification. We also filed a notice with the local bank stating that no third-party authorizations could be added without my written approval. Mrs. Keller, he said as he handed me the paperwork. Most people don't realize how common this is. Children pretending to help while draining their parents' accounts. It's an epidemic. You're doing the right thing. Doing the right thing, I repeated softly. Then why does it feel so wrong? He gave me a sympathetic smile. Because love shouldn't feel like a courtroom. That night, I sat by my window, watching the streetlights shimmer against the rain. For the first time in my life, I was alone, not abandoned, but free. And yet, deep inside, I sensed something darker was forming. Ethan and Lara weren't going to stop. The entitlement I'd enabled for years wouldn't vanish overnight. They had lost their source of comfort, and people like them don't let go of comfort easily. A week later, my fears came true. I returned from a morning walk to find two police officers standing at my front door. Mrs. Keller. One asked gently, "We've received a wellness check request from your family. They say you might be in distress." For a moment, the world stopped. My own son had reported me to the authorities. The wellness check was only the beginning. What Ethan and Lara planned next would push me to the edge and force me to fight for my sanity, my home, and my name. When I opened the door and saw two officers standing there, I thought for a split second they'd come to the wrong address. But when one of them said my name, Mrs. Keller, my heart dropped. Yes, I managed. We received a call from your family. They're worried about your well-being. Do you mind if we come in? I stared at them, struggling to believe the words. My son had actually called the police on me. I stepped aside slowly. Of course, I said, keeping my voice steady. Come in. They walked into my living room, taking cautious looks around. We just need to make sure you're all right, Mum, one of them said. I'm fine, I replied calmly. But I assume my son, Ethan, told you otherwise. They exchanged a quick look, confirming my suspicion. He mentioned that you've been acting unusually. Changing locks, cutting off communication, installing cameras. I laughed softly. No cameras, officer. Just new locks to keep unwanted guests out. Guests who enter uninvited, read my private papers, and call it help. The older officer nodded slightly. Do you live alone? I do, I said proudly, and I manage perfectly well. I cook, I drive, I pay my bills, and I read the newspaper every morning. But apparently, being independent at 70 is now suspicious behavior. He smiled faintly, almost apologetic. We see this kind of thing more often than you'd think. Mrs. Keller, sometimes families overreact, sometimes families manipulate. I corrected softly. After a short conversation. They left, satisfied that I was in good health. But as I closed the door, the anger that had been quietly simmering finally began to boil. Ethan and Lara weren't just being entitled anymore, they were trying to discredit me. First the lawyer, now the police. I could see the pattern forming, make me look unstable, then swoop in to take care of me and my bank accounts. That night, I sat at my desk, writing everything down, dates, times, words. Mr. Graham had told me to document every move they made, and now I understood why. I wasn't just dealing with family drama anymore. This was a coordinated attack. 2 days later, there was another knock at the door. This time it wasn't the police, it was a woman in a crisp grey suit, holding a clipboard. Good morning, Mrs. Keller. I'm Ms. Dawson from the Department of Senior Affairs. We received a report about a potential case of self-neglect. May I come in? Self-neglect. The term stung. My son had clearly escalated things. I took a slow breath. Before you step inside, may I see your ID? She showed me her badge and paperwork. Everything looked official. Fine, I said, stepping aside. But I want to call my lawyer first. She frowned slightly. That's not necessary, this is just a wellness check. Oh, I've heard that before. I said dryly, already dialing Mr. Graham's number. When he answered, I explained the situation quickly. His tone turned firm. Tell her not to ask you any personal financial questions until I arrive. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Ms. Dawson tried to maintain her professional calm, but I could tell my insistence on legal counsel irritated her. 15 minutes later, Mr. Graham walked in, briefcase in hand. Ms. Dawson, he said politely but sharply, you are conducting an inquiry based on unverified family claims. My client is mentally sound, fully independent, and has the right to representation. Her demeanor softened immediately. I understand, Mr. Graham. We're just following protocol. Then let's follow it properly, he said, producing a folder. Inside were my recent medical reports, tax filings, and proof of my mental competency, all current and spotless. She reviewed them quietly. When she looked up, her tone had changed completely. Mrs. Keller, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Everything appears in perfect order. I'll be closing this case immediately. After she left, I finally allowed myself to exhale. Mr. Graham looked at me with concern. They're desperate now. If they're willing to drag in state officials, they'll stop at nothing. Then let them come, I said, my voice cold but steady. They've taken my peace once. They won't take it again. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Lara. We didn't want it to come to this, but you forced our hand. You'll regret making us look like villains. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I deleted it. No response. No reaction. Just silence. For the first time in my life, I understood what real power felt like, not control over others, but control over myself, still. A small voice whispered in the back of my mind, they're not finished. And I knew that voice was right. Because the next time they came after me, they wouldn't use the law or the police, they'd use the one weapon I never expected. When my own son tried to prove I was mentally unfit in court, I thought I had lost everything. But I was wrong. That battle would awaken a strength I never knew I had. It happened 2 weeks later. A letter arrived from the county family court, sealed and official looking. For a moment, I thought it was another scam until I saw the names printed on the petition, Ethan Keller and Lara Keller. The words below made my blood run cold. Petition for guardianship due to mental incompetence. I sank into my chair, reading line after line of fabricated claim statements about erratic behavior, signs of confusion, and suspected financial vulnerability. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. My own son was trying to have me declared mentally unfit to take legal control of everything I owned. That evening, I met with Mr. Graham at his office. His face darkened as he read the papers. This is worse than I thought, he said finally. They've built a false narrative around you. What do you mean? I asked. They've gathered witnesses, he said grimly. According to this, your neighbor, Mr. Douglas, claims you've been yelling at imaginary people, and your pharmacist allegedly reported you hoarding medication you never take. I blinked in disbelief. That's ridiculous. I barely take aspirin. I know, he said gently, but to a court, a signed statement is a piece of evidence. And they've got plenty of paper, even if it's all lies. I sat back in silence, stunned by the betrayal. I had seen Ethan make mistakes before: selfishness, irresponsibility, immaturity, but this was something darker. This was calculated. Graham continued, we'll need a counter-strategy. First, we'll get a certified psychological evaluation to prove your competence. Then we'll gather testimonies from people who can vouch for your stability. Like who? I asked quietly. Your friends, neighbors, anyone who's seen you managing your own affairs. Do you still talk to your old friend Eleanor next door? I nodded. Yes, she's been a blessing lately. Good. People like her are invaluable in court. Judges trust first-hand witnesses. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's signature at the bottom of that petition. The same hand I had held when he was a little boy learning to write his name. The next morning, I drove straight to River Pharmacy to confront Mr. Green, the pharmacist mentioned in the documents. He looked startled to see me. Double quotes Mrs. Keller. He said, adjusting his glasses nervously, "Mr. Green," I said calmly, "I need you to tell me exactly what you told my daughter-in-law about my medication." He hesitated. "She came in last month and said she was worried. She asked what prescriptions you had. I told her you only buy vitamins and occasional painkillers. She said that was proof you weren't caring for yourself properly." I sighed. "And the statement she made you sign?" His face reddened. "She said it was for insurance. I didn't know it was part of a court case." "I'm so sorry, then I need you to write another statement," I said firmly. "The truth this time," he nodded immediately. "I'll do it right now." When I left the pharmacy, I felt a small spark of power again. It wasn't over, but at least I wasn't helpless. Next, I stopped by my neighbor Mr. Douglas's house. He opened the door with his usual sour expression. "Mr. Douglas," I began, "I saw your name on a statement claiming I yell at imaginary people." He crossed his arms. "I didn't lie." I heard shouting. "Do you mean the day my son broke into my house with a lawyer and I told them to leave?" He hesitated. "Well, yes, but then next time, before you assume someone's lost their mind, maybe ask what's really happening," I said sharply, turning away. That afternoon, I called Eleanor. When I told her everything, she was outraged. "They can't get away with this, Renata." "I'll testify." "So will everyone from the garden club." Her fierce loyalty nearly brought me to tears. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely alone. The following day, I sat in Dr. Moore's office. A respected psychologist Mr. Graham had recommended. She asked thoughtful questions, tested my memory, reasoning, and decision-making. After 2 hours, she smiled warmly. "Mrs. Keller, your results are excellent. You're sharp, articulate, and completely capable of managing your life. I'll write an official report confirming that." As I left her office, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: validation. Proof that I wasn't crazy, no matter how hard they tried to make me believe I was. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Ethan and Lara weren't the type to accept defeat quietly. And sure enough, a week later, I received another notice. My court date had been set. The time had come to face my son in a courtroom. I thought I was prepared to see Ethan in court. But when I saw the lies they told under oath, I realized this fight wasn't about money anymore. It was about destroying me completely. The morning of the hearing, I woke before dawn. For a moment, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the faint light spilling through the curtains. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from disbelief. I was about to walk into a courtroom where my own son would stand before a judge and try to convince the world that I was insane. I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit Robert had always said made me look strong but kind. I wanted the judge to see that I wasn't a frail old woman. I was still me, clear-headed, aware, and unwilling to surrender. Graham picked me up promptly at 8. "Remember," he said gently, "we're not here to attack, only to show truth. They carry the burden of proof. You just be yourself." The courthouse smelled of polished floors and cold coffee. As we walked through the hallway, I saw Ethan and Lara sitting with their lawyer, Mr. Franklin, whispering. Ethan looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were hard, defensive. Lara, as always, looked composed, wearing black as though she were attending a funeral. Perhaps she was, though not mine, but our family's. When our eyes met, Ethan looked away. Lara didn't. She held my gaze with a faint, victorious smile. The bailiff called our case. My legs felt heavy, but my steps were steady. I took my seat beside Mr. Graham, directly across from my son. Franklin rose first, speaking with the smooth confidence of someone who had practiced every word. "Your Honor," he began, "this is not a case of greed or resentment. This is a case of concern. My clients have observed a sharp mental decline in Mrs. Keller's erratic financial decisions. paranoia, isolation, and susceptibility to manipulation by outsiders. He gestured subtly toward me, as though I were a child to be discussed, not a person to be respected. When he finished, Mr. Graham stood. "Your Honor," he said, voice firm but calm, "what we have here is not a mother losing her mind, but a mother reclaiming her independence. Mrs. Keller's only erratic decision was refusing to continue being exploited by two adults who believe love is measured in dollars." The judge, Hun Meredith Cole, nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Let's proceed with witnesses," she said. Laura was first. She took the stand and began to cry almost instantly. "She's not the woman she used to be," she said between practice sobs. "She cuts us off, yells for no reason, changes the locks. We just want to help her." Mr. Graham leaned forward. "Mrs. Keller's lawyer requests cross-examination," he said. Double quotes Mrs. Keller. He began, looking straight at Lara. "How many times have you contacted my client without asking for money?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Do you recall the words you said when she asked about the wedding?" "I don't. You said, 'We only invited special people.' Was that out of love too?" Her face flushed crimson. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Mr. Graham pressed, but Lara stayed silent. Next, Ethan was called. My heart clenched watching him raise his right hand and swear to tell the truth. He looked nervous but determined. "My mother's been confused," he said. "She forgets things, gets angry easily. We're just trying to protect her from being manipulated." Mr. Graham's cross-examination was brutal in its simplicity. "Mr. Keller, how much money has your mother given you in the past 3 years?" Ethan hesitated. "I don't know exactly. Will it surprise you if I said over $32,000? He swallowed hard. "Is it true you and your wife entered her home without permission?" He fidgeted. "We thought she might be in trouble." "Trouble," Mr. Graham repeated. Yet somehow that trouble required a lawyer and access to her financial records. Ethan looked down, unable to respond. When it was my turn to testify, my knees nearly buckled, but I stood tall. Mr. Graham guided me gently through each question, letting me tell the story in my own words. I described the rent payments, the food deliveries, the wedding humiliation, and the day they tried to force me into signing over power of attorney. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked visibly moved. Then came Dr. Moore, my psychologist, who confirmed my mental clarity with professional precision. "Mrs. Keller scored exceptionally high in all cognitive assessments," she said. "Her reasoning and memory functions are excellent for her age." Mr. Franklin tried to poke holes in her testimony, but it was useless. The facts were solid. After hours of questioning, the judge finally spoke. "I've heard enough. I'll take a short recess before delivering my decision." As everyone filed out, Ethan approached me. His voice trembled with a mixture of anger and desperation. "Mom, you're making a mistake. This could have been avoided." "No, Ethan," I said softly. "This could have been avoided the day you chose money over me." He opened his mouth but said nothing. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of losing me, but of losing the control he thought he had. When the judge returned, her face was calm but firm. "I've reached my decision," she began. "And let me be clear, Mrs. Keller is fully competent. There is no evidence of mental decline. This case, therefore, is dismissed." My breath caught. I had won, but as relief washed over me, I saw Lara whisper something to Ethan, her expression twisted with cold fury. And in that instant, I realized this victory wasn't the end. It was only a pause before their next move. Ethan and Lara might have lost in court, but what they did next was darker than anything I could have imagined. And this time, they didn't come for my money. They came for my reputation. For a few blessed weeks after the trial, my life felt peaceful again. I woke without dread. I drank coffee without expecting the phone to ring. The silence that had once felt like abandonment now felt like armor. But peace doesn't last long when greed is still hungry. One morning, I opened my mailbox and found a newspaper folded neatly inside. On the front page was a headline that made my stomach drop: "Local woman accused of abandoning family after questionable financial decisions." Beneath it was a grainy picture of me outside the courthouse, my hand raised mid-sentence, looking, to an untrained eye, like I was shouting. The article claimed I'd cut off her struggling family despite their loving concern. Every word was a lie, a twisted version of the truth written with venom. The source: an anonymous relative I didn't need to guess. I knew exactly whose fingerprints were on every word. That afternoon, I called Mr. Graham, furious. "They've taken this to the media now. Isn't there anything I can do?" He sighed. "Technically, it's defamation, but proving it would be messy. The best thing you can do is not engage publicly. Don't respond to reporters. Don't post anything online. They're trying to bait you into a reaction." I hung up and sat in silence, staring at the newspaper on my table. They had lost the court battle, so now they were trying to destroy my reputation. A few days later, my neighbor Eleanor came over with a tray of cookies and her usual warmth. "Ignore that nonsense, Renata," she said firmly. "People who matter know the truth. Let the rest talk themselves." Tired, her words comforted me more than she knew. But the damage had already started. At the grocery store, familiar faces suddenly avoided my gaze. The cashier, once cheerful, kept the conversation short. I even overheard two neighbors whispering as I passed by. Still, I refused to retreat. I'd fought too hard for my freedom to hide now. That weekend, I invited Eleanor and a few of my new friends from the garden club over for tea. We laughed, shared stories, and for a while, I forgot about Ethan and Lara. But halfway through the afternoon, I noticed a car parked across the street. A silver hatchback I recognized immediately. Lara. She was sitting behind the wheel, pretending to look at her phone. Every so often, she glanced toward my house. "Don't tell me that's who I think it is," Eleanor muttered, following my gaze. "Oh, it's her," I said quietly. "She's just reminding me she's still watching. She's pathetic," Eleanor said, shaking her head. "People like her can't stand losing control." After the trial, Mr. Graham had helped me file a restraining order, so I knew they couldn't approach me directly. But watching her sit there, pretending to scroll, filled me with a cold kind of anger. 2 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mom," Ethan's voice said softly. I froze. "You lost the right to call me that the day you stood in front of a judge and called me incompetent. Please, just listen," he said. His tone was different, quiet, uncertain. "Lara's gone too far." I didn't know about the newspaper. I swear, I wanted to believe him. For a fleeting second, I saw the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard. "Ethan," I said, "you stood beside her through everything. Every lie, every humiliation. You had your chance to make things right." "I know," he whispered. "But she's not stopping. She's angry because we lost. She said if she can't get your money, she'll ruin your name." I stayed silent, letting the words sink in. "Mom," he continued, "please, can we talk? Just once, I'll come alone." I hesitated. Something in his voice sounded genuine, desperate even. But I had learned the hard way that desperation and deceit often wore the same face. "No," I said finally. "If you want to talk, you can write me a letter. The kind that takes effort. Words written by hand carry more truth than ones spoken out of guilt." He didn't reply. The line went dead. That night, I sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker. Maybe I should have felt lonely, but instead, I felt lighter. Ethan's call had given me closure. I finally understood he wasn't a villain. He was weak. And weakness in the hands of a manipulator like Lara was just as dangerous as cruelty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lara wasn't done. People like her didn't lose gracefully, and I was right. Because a week later, when I thought things were finally calming down, I received an unexpected letter that would change everything again. It wasn't from Ethan or Laura. It was from a publishing company. They claimed to have received a memoir submission, a book telling my story from the perspective of my estranged, heartbroken son. The book wasn't just another lie, it was their final, calculated strike. But this time, I wasn't the victim. I was ready to fight back and make sure they'd never silence me again. When I first opened the envelope from the publishing company, I thought it had to be some mistake. Me, an old woman living quietly in a small town, receiving a letter from a media house in New York. But the moment I saw the title printed across the page, my stomach turned. The Forgotten Mother, A Son's Story of Love and Loss, by Ethan Keller. I sat there, frozen as the words blurred before my eyes. They had written a book about me. My life, my pain, my humiliation, repackaged as fiction. The letter congratulated Mr. Keller on his forthcoming memoir and asked for a release form from the subject referenced in certain chapters. In other words, they wanted my permission to legally publish their lies. I called Mr. Graham immediately. Within an hour, he was at my house, flipping through the letter. His brow furrowed. "They're smarter than I thought," he murmured. "This isn't a direct attack, it's reputation warfare. If they get this book out, it'll poison public opinion forever. Can we stop it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes," he said firmly. "But we have to act fast." Over the next few days, I worked with him to collect every piece of evidence, the court ruling that proved my mental fitness, the restraining order, and even the newspaper article. Everything that showed a clear pattern of defamation and exploitation. Meanwhile, word spread around town about Ethan's so-called memoir. I could see the shift in people's faces, curiosity mixed with gossip. The same neighbors who once whispered behind my back now wondered aloud if maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong about me. A week later, Mr. Graham arranged a meeting with the publishing company's legal team. It was held over video call, me sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at faces miles away. "Mrs. Keller," one of them said politely, "we were under the impression that you consented to your story being shared. Did you also get the impression," I replied evenly, "that it's ethical to publish lies without verifying them?" The man cleared his throat. "Mr. Keller assured us everything in the book was true. Then perhaps you should have checked court records," I said sharply, sliding a document toward the camera, the official judgment declaring me mentally sound. "You're about to print a book accusing me of insanity when a court has already proven otherwise. That's not literature. That's libel." They exchanged uncomfortable glances. Graham leaned forward. "If you publish that book, you'll face a defamation suit that will cost far more than any profit you'd make. I'd advise withdrawing it immediately, within 24 hours. They did. The book was cancelled, the files recalled, and Ethan's memoir vanished before a single copy could reach print for the first time in months. I exhaled without pain. Eleanor came over that evening, bringing her usual comfort, a pot of chamomile tea and 2 slices of lemon cake. When I told her what happened, she smiled proudly. "You didn't just survive them, Renata. You outsmarted them." Her words made me laugh softly. "I didn't know I had it in me." "Oh, you did," she said. "You just needed the chance to see it." That night, I walked through my quiet home, each room holding echoes of who I used to be. The woman who wants to find her worth by the people she supported. That woman was gone now. In her place stood someone who finally understood that love without respect is nothing more than dependence dressed up as devotion. Months passed. I sold the house and moved into a sunlit apartment overlooking the river. I joined a community art class, started painting again, the way Robert always encouraged me to. I made new friends, traveled, laughed. I even began sharing my own story online, not out of revenge, but to help others recognize the signs of manipulation before it was too late. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a letter arrived, handwritten, no return address. I opened it carefully. It was from Ethan. Mom, it began, "You were right about everything. Lara left. She took what little we had and disappeared. I'm working 2 jobs now. For the first time, I understand how much you sacrificed. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you're happy." I read the letter twice. My heart ached, but not the way it once did. This time, the pain didn't come from betrayal. It came from letting go. I placed the letter in a box, not of resentment, but of closure. Then I walked to the balcony, watching the river shimmer in the fading light. For the first time in my 72nd year, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace that didn't depend on anyone else. "Robert," I whispered softly into the evening breeze. I finally did it. I learned how to love myself the way I once loved everyone else, and somewhere deep within, I knew he would be proud. When life takes everything, your money, your trust, your illusions, sometimes it's only then that you discover what truly can't be stolen: your strength, your dignity, and your freedom. If you've ever been used, betrayed, or forgotten, remember, like I did, it's never too late to reclaim your story.